Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Remember, if you love film, gaming, or television content, please consider clicking that subscribe button because we are going to be talking about the new Christopher Nolan film, a very highly anticipated film, Oppenheimer. So let's get into it.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
So, as we all know, Christopher Nolan is truly one of the greatest filmmakers alive right now. I truly think that he has put out some of my favorite films of all time. Interstellar, Inception, the entire Dark Knight trilogy are all phenomenal movies in my eyes. But, as I mentioned a little bit in my Tenet review, which you can check out, I think that Nolan has been on a little bit of a cold streak in my eyes. I think he has put out very thought-provoking films like Tenet and Dunkirk, but they don't quite hit the mark that those films where he was kind of in his peak, the ones that made him get the reputation he has now, he just hasn't been hitting that level lately in my eyes. And there was a little bit of skepticism for me going into Oppenheimer because of that. But I can't deny that I was so excited to see this movie. So, is this a hit from Nolan? You're goddamn right, it is. He just nailed it here. It is so much more different compared to what we're used to from him. It does have those big epic moments that you expect, but at the same time, this film is a full character study that is so dialogue driven, and it is still very complex in its narrative. It might be one of his most complex tales yet. Oppenheimer does require a second watch, hands down. I think that there's just so many things that this wants to cover, so many little nuances that this will take multiple viewings. And that's the beauty of a Nolan film. It's complex in just the right way. So as you all know, Oppenheimer follows Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. This doesn't just want to cover the big explosions and the devastation of the bomb. It wants to go through practically his entire life leading up to that moment, and then quite a long time after that moment. It really covers his entire life in a lot of ways. So I think you get a really well-rounded perspective on Oppenheimer. He's a very controversial figure in history. He is responsible for murdering hundreds of thousands of people and affecting generations of Japanese people. So I'm glad to say that the film doesn't always put him in a positive light. It does sometimes question who he is as a person, why he made the decisions he did that led to such devastation, and the consequences of having to live with that. And I really like the approach that Nolan took in balancing the nuances of this person. It doesn't really want to completely degrade him either and just stomp on him. It also wants to show you a more empathetic side to him. It shows him feeling remorse, and I really like that good balance there. We live in a world where everything is very black and white. Some people are really great or some people are very evil, and there doesn't seem to be a good in-between. Oppenheimer is viewed as a villainous figure in history for all of the devastation and the lives he took. He deserves to be condemned for all of that. But to some people, he's viewed as an American hero because what he did was responsible for ending World War II almost immediately afterwards. Now, as I mentioned, this is a very dialogue-driven movie. It is exactly 3 hours long, I believe, and there's not a whole lot of action, so just be prepared for that going into it. This film is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's going to have some divide like Barbie because both these movies have been hyped up to a degree where a lot of the casual audience are going to see both these movies. And I don't really think both these movies work too well with too much of the casual audience. Because Barbie, on one hand, has very controversial and strong opinions about people. And then Oppenheimer is a very mature take on, once again, a very controversial figure in history. So I don't think that really both these movies are made for everyone. They're made for a specific group of people that are really going to enjoy these movies. But if you're outside of that box, I think that some people are going to come out of Oppenheimer thinking it's boring. But I really don't think it is. I think it just spins such an interesting web, and even though I'm getting the feeling that this film is quite slow in its pacing, that didn't stop me from being engaged with it the entire way through. Every single word I am paying attention to. I'm interested in what these characters have to say. And as someone who doesn't know a whole lot about this person, I was on board for a really good lesson here into who Oppenheimer is and what actually happened throughout his life. I only really knew beforehand that he was the father of the atomic bomb and the line that he is kind of known for.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Alright, let's get into the amazing performances this has. I think this might be the best ensemble of the year. Cillian Murphy as the lead, as Oppenheimer, is terrific. He just has so much weight on him as a character, and he just communicates that perfectly. Just from the look in his eyes, you can tell that he is so haunted with regret and remorse, and I thought he played that picture perfectly. There are two other supporting performances that I thought are really deserving of an Oscar nomination in supporting categories. The first one being Emily Blunt. I thought that she was absolutely terrific in this movie. She had a couple of standout scenes. I really loved her performance. Her character was really fascinating too, and in the limited amount of time that we got with her, I was always engrossed in every scene that she was in. The other one, of course, everyone has been talking about it. Robert Downey Jr. finally gets to flex his acting chops a little bit. We all know that he's a terrific actor, but not a whole lot of people have really seen him outside of things like Marvel and Tropic Thunder. This dude is a fantastic actor, and he just really showcases that here. I really think that he is so deserving of an Oscar nomination here. It is one of my favorite supporting performances of the entire year. He was so engrossing as a character, and just little nuances in the performance as your perspective changes a whole lot around this character. He just played that to perfection and worked with the dialogue that was written for him by Nolan incredibly well. You also have a bunch of other great little supporting performances. It almost feels like cameos at times from just A-listers out there. There's a ton of well-known actors in this movie, even if they're in it for like 2 scenes and then that's it. And I think that's just because they feel honored to be a part of a Nolan film. He has that reputation where I think a lot of actors really want to work with him. Speaking of the devil, let's get into Christopher Nolan's direction. I mean, he's Christopher Nolan. Of course, it is so well directed. He makes a film that is made for the big screen, and that couldn't be truer than Oppenheimer. The sound in this was phenomenal. I had major problems with the sound mixing in Tenet, and while I don't think it was fully resolved here, there were a couple of moments where I thought the sound mixing was a little bit off and it was tricky to hear what people were saying. But it was so limited compared to what we got in Tenet. It was a massive improvement, and when this film wanted to get loud, it rocked you right to the core. You felt the impact of these explosions through the sound. It was just a really incredible experience that we don't get too often because, as I said, Nolan purposely makes films for the big screen, and you feel that from the minute that this film starts. Also, other things like the costume design, production design, the makeup are all really great, and it feels seamless. There's no CGI in this film at all. Everything is so practical, as you come to expect from a Nolan film, and it looks gorgeous. Some of these explosions, I cannot believe that they actually got this on film. It honestly looks real mesmerizing. Ludwig Göransson's score as well is really beautiful to listen to. It enhances a lot of the scenes and does exactly what a good score is supposed to. I don't know if this will become my favorite score by the end of the year because Dune Part 2 is coming out and I think that score is going to be phenomenal, but this will definitely be up there for me. I think another thing that is going to surprise a lot of people is that this is Nolan's most notable work in terms of writing. I feel like there is so much dialogue here, and Nolan usually has a balance between his screenplay as well as massive spectacle. He limits the spectacle a lot more here. As I said, this is mostly dialogue. I'm telling you that right now. This is a 3-hour movie and about 2.5 hours are dialogue. So just go into Oppenheimer knowing that you're not going to be getting an atomic bomb going off every 5 seconds. But when we get to the moment that bombs start going off, you feel it. It makes so much more impact. And I think that was all credited to the beauty of this really smart screenplay that I think will reward us even more as we watch this a second or third time. Another thing as well, this film is very somber. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I just sat in my seat and I just felt kind of hopeless by the end of it. It was just a really powerful moment, and the whole film just carries this weight to it as you know that this happened in real life. This is a tragedy, an absolute almost stain on the human race, what happened here. So many lives were lost, and it continues to affect us to this day. And Nolan really took that seriously. This is not a popcorn flick. This isn't cracking jokes every 5 seconds. This is a weighty movie that has a real sad and somber tone to it. And that's what this film needed to be. Nolan understood what to do here, and he did it at an incredibly high level that only he can really do. Also, just going into the cinematography a little bit more as well, there are these black and white sequences as well as scenes in color, and it was purposeful. I didn't know if it was just going to be a superficial choice or it was actually going to mean something in the context of the story. It actually does mean something. It does play an important role, I believe, and I really liked its placement here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this might be the first time that Nolan has actually used black and white in a film before. And credit to him, it looks stunning. Okay, let's get into some Oscar chatter. I really think that this is a huge play at the Oscars. I can see this getting nominated for maybe 10 awards. It really can get nominated for practically every single technical category. It is that well made in that regard. But I think that the screenplay is deserving of a nomination. I think that this is deserving of a director nomination. I think Cillian Murphy deserves a nomination for his performance. I think Emily Blunt deserves a nomination for her performance. Robert Downey Jr. deserves a nomination. I think this deserves a Best Picture nomination. And there is a good chance that it can actually get there on its best day. We have to see how this is campaigned in the future because we are in July now. We're not going to get the nominations to early next year. So we've got to see how long this is going to last in people's minds as a really special film as all the TIFF movies come out and people start praising those ones. But I think it does have a good chance of getting in those categories because this just has such weight to it. I think that this is kind of hard to ignore in the grand scheme of the best films of the year. It's tough for me to give this a score. I'm hovering between a 4.5 and a 5. I think I'll be kind and give this the 5 because I know I'm going to rewatch this again. I know that it was so incredibly powerful, and the moments that I missed, I already know are going to add so much more to this story. I have faith that Nolan can really deliver on every single moment, but I do give you a little bit of caution that this is not for everyone. Not everyone is going to praise this through the wazoo. It's kind of like Barbie. Some people are really passionate about that movie. Some people I've already seen are ragging on it so much. And I think the comparison between these two movies, while fun in the grand scheme of things, I don't like the comparison. You know, if you like Barbie, don't like Oppenheimer, that's amazing for you. If you love Oppenheimer, don't like Barbie, that's great. You know, all of our tastes are different. It is what it is. But these movies should not really be compared because there is not one single commonality that these films share. They're completely different in every single way. I'm telling you right now, there is not one thing that I can think of that links those two apart from this release date. They're completely opposite, and the comparison between the two, I think, is a little bit unwarranted. Overall, Nolan is a fantastic director. He deserves all the praise in the world for this movie, and just how heavy this was just something I haven't experienced in a theater for a long time. The fact that he was giving such a large budget and made something that was serious, that didn't have a million jokes, that wasn't made to appeal to every single person. It also didn't feel safe. It has elements in it that people aren't going to like. It can be confronting with its history and its criticism of people in that era. So I think that that's a very daring choice that I really like to see in films. Not everyone should go, oh, that movie was good, and then move on. I would prefer a movie that people go, that film was amazing, and then some people go, I don't like that film, because that's what art is. Art is, it strikes everyone completely differently. It's interpretive. It touches on people's past. It makes people connect with them in a certain way while it doesn't connect with other people. And Oppenheimer is a true testament to that. Anyway, those are just my quick thoughts towards Oppenheimer. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. And if you haven't, are you going to see this film? Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.